Hello and welcome to the Transcend and Succeed podcast, a unique platform dedicated to the exploration of taboo topics that often go unspoken in the realms of spiritual development and personal experience. I'm your host, Dawn Livingston, and I want to provide you with knowledge to help you change your perception and open your mind to new possibilities and new opportunities for spiritual expansion, personal growth, and profound transformation. In a world where certain subjects are often shrouded in silence, I believe in fostering candid and open discussions about the uncharted territories of our inner worlds. My guests will have had extraordinary experiences and will share their insights and journeys, inviting you to embrace the unexplored aspects of your own existence, both physical and non-physical. Join us on this illuminating and enlightening journey as we challenge taboos and empower you to transcend limitations and truly succeed in your spiritual and personal evolution. Welcome to the Transcend and Succeed podcast. And today I have the honour of hosting Megan Mary, who is a seasoned dream interpreter with a specialization in the analysis of women's dreams. Megan's journey into the realm of dreams is not just a professional pursuit, but it's deeply personal. She firmly believes that the symbolic imagery in our dreams holds the key to unlocking our innate transformative power, allowing us to evolve our consciousness and ultimately discover our life's purpose. Now, Megan brings a wealth of knowledge and insight to our conversation today. We'll explore the depths of the dream world with Megan from her experiences and jump into the significance of symbolic imagery, the wisdom hidden within our subconscious minds, and the undeniable connection between our dreams and our waking lives. So hello, Megan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Dawn.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to this conversation because I'm absolutely fascinated with dreams and I have had some crackers. So firstly, will you just tell us what happened for you to decide to take this dream analysis path?
Yes, so I have always been fascinated with dreams ever since I was little. When I was younger, I used to have recurring dreams, both wonderful flying dreams and recurring nightmares. And I always wondered what they meant and why we spent so much time there and what was happening when we were dreaming. And I intrinsically felt that there was a greater mystical meaning, that there was something unseen that was happening that wasn't really being discussed. And I used to go and look in dream dictionaries and I used to try and figure out what they meant. And I explored every kind of metaphysical and philosophical aspect that I could as I grew up. And I think at one point I kind of stopped listening to them. I just kind of set that down and went on my way and started doing my career and all that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with 3 chronic illnesses that I realized that I had to do some inner work. I had to go back and really try to reconnect to that subconscious, higher universal self to heal. And that's when I started meditating again. And that's when the dream work came back in. And that really became, for me, a portal to healing and transformation that then I felt very much called at the time to do that work and to help other women on their path.
Okay, so where from your perspective then, where do the dreams take place? Because I seem to describe it as a place between asleep and awake. It seems to be just when I'm nodding off at the end of the day and I'm not quite there yet, but that's when my dream seems to come through.
Interesting. I refer to that space as sort of the middle world.
The middle world.
The place between waking and sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And in that place, I very often get what I call middle messages. And they're very powerful messages that come through that aren't always quite in the format of a dream story, but they're nevertheless very profound messages. To me, I think it has to do with the brainwave change in state, because when we're waking, we're in beta, and when we're sleeping, we're in theta, and when we're meditating, we're in theta. And that transition between beta and theta is what allows that middle space. But I feel that the theta state is a very magical state where not only can we disconnect from our 3D selves and our physical existence, but we can also reconnect with our universal and higher self and that profound wisdom that lays in that world. And so to me, I feel that even though they may be occurring in our brain, our physical brain, that knowing is very much of a greater consciousness, the universal consciousness, if you will.
I would agree with that, definitely. Dreams to me are very symbolic, and I know you believe that too. So why are they so symbolic? We don't seem to get any help to read them, with the images and the visions that we're given. So why are they so symbolic? You'd think it'd be a little bit easier for us just to be given a direct message. It'd cut out a lot of time.
Yes. Well, I think because it's a riddle, really. It's a message that is not supposed to be direct because we have free will, right? So we have the ability to just turn them off, to not pay attention to them, to discard them, and to go about our way. But we also have the ability to uncrack them, to decode them, to integrate them, to listen. And I think the mystery lies in their subtleness in that way. And so, fundamentally, one of the theories about why they're so symbolic has to do with the way our brain processes information. And so, our subconscious makes up 95% of our mind, and our conscious is only 5%. So there's so much laying below the surface, that giant glacier that we only see the tip of. And when we have a dream, we're really taking in, it's a combination of all of that information in our subconscious, every experience we've ever had, any thought or perspective that we've ever had on anything, and some may believe in any past life experience that we have as well, in a spiritual sense. So it's a combination of all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, dreams are really stories, and our stories are told in a very specific dream language, and that language is a symbolic one. And when we can learn to look at them as a story and then to decode that story in our own personal language, then we really start to get at the true meaning of those dreams.
Mm-hmm. I know sometimes they can be subtle, other times they can be like, a 2x4 to the back of the head, They can just be really, really, really obvious. And I find that my dreams seem to reflect my state of mind when I go to my bed. I think if I've had a really busy day and, my mind's been really chaotic, my dreams tend to be chaotic as well. Is that similar to what you've experienced?
Yes, absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I incorporate mood in my method. So when I have my clients keep a dream journal, I ask them to make sure that they write down what their mood was when they went to sleep. So when they were still awake, what their mood was like as a result of their day. And then what kind of emotions they experienced in the dream, as well as what was their mood when they woke up, because those can all be very different and not necessarily predictive by the dream content.
Okay. Are you able to give us an example of somebody that you've analysed their dreams, and I suppose that they have found it correct and it totally resonates with them, what you've been saying? How would you go about analysing someone's dream?
Yes. So I have a 4-step method, basically, and the the 4 steps are memory, mood, mirror, and metaphor. And so the memory is where I just ask you to write it down in as much detail as possible, not leaving anything out, and give the dream a title as if it were a story. So what would that title be? And then, of course, the mood, which we just discussed, writing down the mood in the journal. And then the third is mirror. And this is where I really act like a mirror to the subconscious. And I try to ask a series of questions that draw out your subconscious associations with all the people, places, objects, actions, settings, colors, numbers, everything detailed about the dream. And then lastly, metaphor is where I really look at the whole dream story as a metaphor for something in your waking life. And so I recently had a woman come on my podcast and share her dream. And that dream she titled The Big Wave. And it was actually a recurring dream. So there was many different variations of it. But it was always that there was this giant wave that she was encountering in the ocean. But she would always wake up with a feeling of exhilaration. Now, you may have been thinking in your head, oh, this could be a nightmare. Maybe she's overcome by it. Maybe she's drowning in it. And that could be someone else's experience. So you never know what that metaphor of the wave is going to mean, dreamer to dreamer. But in her case, it was very much a predictive dream that would happen when something major was about to happen in her life. But the feeling of exhilaration was very much indicative of her personal power to overcome those challenges. And in one scenario of the dream, the scene shifts from her being in the water to being on a roller coaster, which she is driving with her children. And it's very interesting that she's driving the roller coaster because you don't drive a roller coaster. And so that really kind of gives us an insight into the fact that the roller coaster is that unpredictability of life, right? And those ups and downs, but that she's driving it is her agency, it's her power, it's her ability to navigate those challenges. And so it was interesting to hear the different variations of that dream over time and look at the different symbolisms in the variations. And also the nice thing about analyzing recurring dreams is that you can look at the threads, so the commonalities versus the differences. And really, many times recurring dreams aren't necessarily exhilarating. They can be nightmares, they can be disturbing. And one of the reasons that they are is because you're not addressing what that subconscious message is. Mm-hmm. And so dream work can really help with identifying what that story is a metaphor for in your life, and then do what I call dream integration techniques to really help you overcome those blocks or beliefs or foundational pieces that are forming your consciousness. And so we can really get at the heart of a lot of things that we're not aware of and give ourselves an opportunity for personal growth when we use dreams as a transformative catalyst.
I've had a few, I suppose you could call them drowning dreams, but when I've either been in a pool or I've been in the ocean, and it's like I could feel myself getting pulled down, heavy and moving down through the water. But I never felt fearful about it at the time. And I always managed to find my way back up to the surface, which was very strange. And I haven't had it for a long time. So does that mean then that I've probably addressed subconsciously what the inner work needed attention?
Yes, or consciously.
Release?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Really, yes. That whatever that was that you felt you were drowning in, because many times I look at the elements in the dream, earth, air, fire, and water can be the emotional aspect of dreams. And it can be small raindrops, a puddle, to big, the ocean. And when you're having that experience of drowning, that very often can be the overwhelming of those emotions. And when you stop having that dream, then that means that you have found a way through those emotions.
Mm-hmm. What is your take on being naked in your dreams? Because if I look this up, it's got loads and loads of different connotations. So
Yeah.
what's your take on that?
It really comes down to the mood.
Mm.
And it really comes down to all the other details around it. So there are these archetypes in our culture where people try to put meanings on dreams that are universal to everyone. And I feel that removes the custom meaning that it has for you, because no one's experience is exactly like yours. And so if you were to say, well, I had a dream that I was naked last night, and then I say, well, I did too. And then the next thing we might say is, and I was so embarrassed, or, well, I didn't care. Okay, well, now we're talking about a totally different dream.
Mm-hmm.
And also, where were you? You're not going to be in the same place that I was. The people that are there aren't going to be the same people. What you do when you discover that is not going to be the same. So all of those aspects are what start to really tell us, for the dreamer, what it means versus that rote universal meaning that you might find in a dictionary. So in your case, I would ask you a whole number of questions, like, how did you feel when you discovered that? What did you do? Where were you? Who was with you? How did you feel when you woke up? All of those things.
I have no clue. I can't remember. It was quite some time ago. I was just very interested because I know other people have got different takes on it.
Yes.
Just like, that we were talking about drowning there, being in water, I suppose it just depends on how you perceive it. But a lot of people say that water is actually cleansing. So it could be that you're cleansing something. I just wanted your
Yeah.
take on that.
Yeah.
Another question: when you're dreaming, is that an opportunity for loved ones that have passed to actually contact you?
Absolutely. So visitation dreams can be very different from what I would call story dreams, because they seem to be very much directive. There's a person that's passed on that you're suddenly appearing in front of you. They have a very specific thing that they're trying to tell you, and that can often be felt differently and perceived differently and experienced differently than the dreams where there's all these different things happening and the scene is shifting and all the usual kind of dream unusualness. And I've had those visitation dreams, and a lot of my clients have come to me with those. And that to me is a testament to the fact that the dream world is a portal to the spirit world. I feel that we are spirits first and humans second, and that we're not, our existence here in this 3D reality is an illusion, and that we are spirits before and we're spirits after, and that when we dream, we return to that spirit state. So I feel that is a place where we can be our spirit selves. And of course, all the other spirits can communicate more easily with us. They can, of course, in our waking life, but there's too much noise. There's too much distraction. And many times the signs and synchronicities that can be those communications are missed because they're not paid attention to, or they're discarded. And so when we're dreaming, we're in a much more receptible state and able to receive that information in a different way because our brain is working in a different brainwave state. So I feel that's entirely possible, and I find those to be, for the most part, very, very healing experiences.
Yeah, and I understand what you mean by visitation. I had one, probably a couple actually, but one that was definitely very, very profound for me. And I mean, that was many years ago. It's 20 years ago now. But very, very profound. And it really, I think, changed my perception about, realities, non-physical realities. And that was kind of a catalyst for me to do a bit more research and get a bit more interested in it, because it really, when I say hit me hard, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean very profoundly. I know you'll understand what I'm saying. And it was my dad, not long after he had passed, that came to me in light. He was just lit up. His face, I could tell his face. He was just all light. So I completely agree that we're light beings, we're energy beings, and we're having a human experience. It's not the other way around. It's not that we're human beings having a higher vibrational experience. But yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, you were talking about the veil between these two realms, being, quite thin. How can we evoke a crossing? Or is it just something that we've got to let happen?
There is such a thing as dream manifestation and dream incubation. And I feel that through those techniques, you can very well do that. It's mostly a matter of intention and affirmation, where before you go to bed, you either repeat to yourself or write down your intention for that sleeping period. And whether it's a question that you want an answer to, or whether it's someone that you want to visit with, or whatever it might be, with enough intention and dedication and habit to that, I feel that the mind is an incredibly powerful thing. And of course, that we can influence that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have clients that come to you that say, I really have a difficult time remembering my dreams? Because I know that I wake up most mornings and think, oh yeah, I was really heavily dreaming. I know I was, or I was off on my travels. I know I do that sort of thing, but 99.9% of the time, I do not remember anything, especially about 10 seconds after I've woken up. It's completely gone. Yeah, how do we get around that? Is there anything that we can do to increase that recall?
There is, and I have a course where I teach dream recall techniques as part of the decoding process. And you're right, you do forget over 50% of the dream after the first 5 minutes. And that's because we're transitioning in that brainwave state. And for whatever reason, the veil closes so that we can go on our day, right? But there are ways that we can capture that, and that we can pull those threads from that subconscious and from that dream world place. And one of those techniques I simply call thinking backwards. It's taking the habit of, when you first wake up in the morning, to be still and to, almost like a meditative moment, start to think backwards, much like when you walk into a room and you say, what did I come in here for? What was I just doing?
Oh, welcome to my world.
Yes, I just had that great thought, that light bulb, and there was no place to write it down. And so you have to try to retrace your steps. Okay, but mentally, what was I just thinking about? Oh, yeah, that's right. And then what was I thinking before that? Okay. And it's very much like that process, except you're thinking back to the dream, because that's where you just were. That's what you were just thinking about. And so the more you get into the habit of doing that, and it takes patience, but the more you will start to get that little hit, that little, oh, that's right, I was in a library. Okay. And then it'll reveal itself backwards, which is why I sometimes will write the first thing I remember at the bottom of the page, because then the next thing I'm going to remember happened before that and before that and before that. It kind of reveals itself reverse chronologically, if you will. So that's one of the techniques, is simply to start just pausing when you wake up, but also keeping a journal, even if it's not a dream journal to start, is a good way to start getting into the habit of putting your thoughts down and translating your thoughts from the ether of the mind onto paper. Because that whole process is a really kind of mystical one when it comes to recording dreams, because you'll start to write down something, but you're not even sure how to explain it. And that's where the brain has to go to work and start to find the words to explain what you can see clearly in your mind, but might not be easy to explain on paper. And many times I'll get quite a good, what appears to be good detailed record from my clients. And then as soon as I start asking them questions, they'll say, oh, well, I didn't write this down, but it's really like this. And actually it looked like this and it reminded me of this. And then we're really getting to the thick of it, because that initial dream memory wasn't even as detailed as it could have been.
Okay. And what about lucid dreaming? Can you explain that to us? And is that like a partly conscious thing?
I feel that it's a way for us to activate that agency of our larger consciousness. So, lucidity, of course, is really just the awareness, simply put, is the awareness of that we're dreaming. And that state can be attained spontaneously, but it also can be obtained voluntarily through practice. And it's that same kind of intention. And it also can be practiced by mindfulness. So that's where being aware of your reality when you're awake can help you be aware of your reality when you're sleeping. And a lot of people just don't even think about reality, so they don't think about that as they go about their lives and don't notice the difference. And so when you're awake and you start to do what I call reality checks, that's where you start to notice, okay, am I dreaming right now? Is this a dream or not? And the more that you do that, the more habitually you will find performing that same question when you're sleeping and then realizing where you are.
Like practice makes perfect. Hey. So what about I suppose your environment in your dream world? I have had many where I've thought I was waking up slightly and realized I was in my bedroom, I was lying in the bed, but there were subtle differences. So maybe the door was in the wrong place in the wall, or the nightstand was in the wrong place. There was a different light on the nightstand. How common is that, and what does that mean? Because I have been beginning to think that was just a subtle difference between physicality and non-physical environments.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. And it's possibly that middle world.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's a blending of, you're not quite in this total fantasy world, but you're not also in the 3D world. So it's a little bit of that 3D world blending into that ethereal plane. And I think what is interesting about that is what's different.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is the clue. So
That's strange, because usually it's doors that are in a different place,
okay.
or windows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and the same goes for when you're having a dream and you're in a landscape environment that looks like something you've been to in real life, but it's not exactly that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then how is it different? Because that difference is the indicator, perhaps, of the message of the dream. And windows and doors have a lot of symbology. They can be very, very layered in their presentation.
What about water running down a wall horizontally, or
Well,
running
yeah, that's
across a wall? Maybe not running down a wall,
sure.
but running across. That's something I've never been able to. It's something I had a few months ago, but I
Okay.
cannot get to the bottom of it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a tunnel at the time, and the water was going to cross, was going left to right in this tunnel, and there was light at the end of the tunnel. There's some symbology for you. But
Yes.
this water running horizontally just really flummoxed me.
Well, you can see how when you first said it, I'm just seeing a wall and I'm just seeing water. Then you say, oh, it was a tunnel. And then you say, oh, and there was light at the end of the tunnel. All these things, right, start to layer on that meaning, start to help us better understand what that could mean.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just, that's why I feel like dream dictionaries just don't work, because you can't just look at the one element. You have to look at the context of all of the elements. So it's really, how does that present to you when that was happening? Did that seem like you can't cross it, or did it seem like the way it should be, or did it seem unusual, or did it seem normal? All of those things are really going to help explain what that represents.
It was like a natural thing. I remember looking at it thinking, that's a bit strange, that it was going from left to right. I didn't feel like something was wrong. I didn't sense anything around me. It was just, I was just there, which is very bizarre.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different questions that if we were in session, I would ask you about that to try and get to a bit more of that, right? To peel off those layers of the onion.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. I've been interested in it for a while. And I think I told you I have a book that's about an inch thick, and it's full of all my chicken scratches from, when I would wake up at 2 a.m. and try to write something down.
Yes.
But it just, that was what made me realise that, it reflects your state of mind, because that was a very chaotic time for me, nearly 20 years ago. So it fully explains what was going on in my dreams. So I don't know. Do you have any other examples you could give us
In terms of
in
recurring dream,
yeah,
any dream.
anything at all? Mm-hmm. Just give us some
Oh,
education, anything that we might not know.
let's think about this. I think that fundamentally the landscape is very key, because the actions are important and the people are important, but the setting is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So I had another client that was on my podcast that, she wanted to explore one of her dreams, and the setting was started in the room that she was in when she was in high school. And so that really tells us, okay, this is where the emotional basis of this message is coming from. Even though the scene changes multiple times as the dream progresses, the emotionality of the dream and the challenge and the issue that we're talking about originates in when she was a teenager, whatever happened then.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why the settings are so important. So if people say, well, it's the house I grew up in, or it's the house I lived in, the foundation, because it's a place that holds meaning for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then same with the people too. It's a lot of times dreamers think that people are literal. And in the visitation case, I feel like they are. But in a story case, I feel like they're just as metaphorical. So a lot of times there'll be people that you used to know or that you don't know, people that you are like celebrities, for example, that you don't know at all, but you know of. So you don't know them personally, but you have a perception of them. And so all of those things lay the groundwork. So I will ask, well, what does this person represent to you? Or how does this person, what are 3 words that you would use to explain what this person is like? And all of that can really lend to understanding. So I think the actions also too are really important. when you're not lucid, you don't have a choice of what you do. So it's always interesting to see what you do. And I had this lucid dream once where I was being pursued by, I'm not sure if I saw who was pursuing me initially, but they were throwing these like little stars at me, like these almost like weapons that were shaped like stars. And I turned around and there it was a group of women, and I turned them all upside down and made them hold hands. So I really transformed that fear situation and that being attacked situation into cooperation and community and, helping one another. So it was very prophetic, I feel, of my journey in terms of the fears that I had about the work that I felt called to do, and my knowing that there was a community out there that could really support me and help me, and not giving into those fears of being attacked or criticized, or all the imposter stuff that everybody struggles with when they step into their calling.
It's like your inner self screaming to get attention. Here's what's weighing me down. Here's what you need to help me with. So it's like
Yes.
aspects of ourself, isn't it? Yeah,
It
trying to get our own attention.
Yes. And when I initially started to do this dream work, I wasn't even on social media, and I didn't have any intention to get on there. I didn't want to be on video. I didn't even have my podcast yet. And I kept having recurring dreams of trying to close the door and it wouldn't lock, and trying to close the curtains on the window and they wouldn't cover the window. And so when you were talking about doors and windows, it's, in my case, it was very much me trying to hide and not be seen, because as an introvert, that's my default, that's my safe space. And I realized that I had to step out of that and overcome that to reach the people who needed to hear the message that I had. But I hadn't figured out how to do that yet and how to overcome that, because I was still, in the grips of the ego and very concerned about having to do that. And so the dreams were really telling, you got to work on this. You have to overcome this. And eventually I did step out and I did get on social media and I did start going on video and I started my podcast, and those dreams stopped.
Yeah, and I think I've been very similar. Not really wanting to get myself out there. I don't, fear of being heard, fear of being seen, this type of thing. And then I took the TV show and my dreams stopped. My recurring ones like that was around communication. At least I think it was around communication, because I was always holding a cell phone and I was trying to call my husband. And every time I tapped the screen, it would take me to a different screen. It's not the one I wanted. And I couldn't navigate my way back to the call screen. I just couldn't navigate myself back. And I remember being so frustrated on several occasions. And now just thinking about it, when you said that there, it popped into my mind, and they are no longer there because I seem to have overcome that hurdle. That would just really make sense, wouldn't it? There you go.
Yes, and I know exactly those types of dreams, particularly because an identity. So sometimes we have so much of ourselves in our phone, and everything that we're trying to hold in our mind, and everything that we present to the world, and all of our communication out with the world, like you said, but sometimes it can also be our identity. So it really depends on each person's, because some people aren't as attached to their phone. But yes, it's a very common theme, but I think specific as well.
It's been very interesting. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me. Yeah, that was great. It's always nice to get other people's perspectives of, what you're experiencing and what you think it's all about. So let me ask you one final question, actually. I know you work intuitively. Where do you see your analysis compared to like Carl Jung or Sigmund Freud? Because I know Sigmund Freud, everything about his work was all your dreams are all about sex, this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an
Yeah.
opinion?
I think if I had to pick between Jung and Freud, it would be definitely more on the Jungian side,
Yes.
because he really allowed for that. And Freud was all about repression.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree that our subconscious is a vat of repression, but I don't always agree with his theories that it's unresolved desires. I think that sometimes there's opportunities in dreams, and there's visitations, and there's all different kinds of dreams that happen. And so the Jungian perspective is probably more the foundation of my theory, but then I layer on that mystical level, that
Mm-hmm.
metaphysical level, that really takes it to a further spiritual plane, because psychoanalysis really doesn't always breach the spiritual border. It can be very psychologically based and sociologically based, and sometimes have that historical or cultural aspect, but it doesn't really allow for a lot of the supernatural and paranormal experiences
Mm-hmm.
that everyone is having. It doesn't talk about destabilizing philosophical theories that a lot of philosophers put forth, and it doesn't uh, allow for the spiritual intelligence part of it, I feel, because as much as psychotherapy is for personal growth and self-improvement, it's not taking dreams as a doorway to the spirit world.
And I think you've given me a little bit of a reminder to actually get that notebook out with my pen and, lie quietly for a couple of minutes in the morning and just see what comes through, because I'm really quick at getting out of bed in the morning. And it might sound hard to believe, but I really am pretty quick at getting up. So yeah, I'll certainly try some of your techniques, and I'll keep in
Mm-hmm.
touch with you, and let you know if there's any more that comes through. It'd be great. But meantime, Megan, thank you so much. You've given us some great information, and I hope the audience finds it useful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dawn. It was a pleasure.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. If you found this discussion engaging, show your love by liking and subscribing. Don't keep it a secret, tell your friends. Join us next week for more daring conversations on taboo topics that need to be explored. So until then, be safe, have fun, and keep expanding.